Do you know this mask?
Hannya. You've probably seen this face before. It's on the flash wall of every tattoo shop. It shows up as tattoos on game characters, and it's quietly everywhere on clothes and logos too. Actually, we covered this once before, a short 3 minutes video early in the channel. But honestly, that one barely scratched the surface. We are grabbing her of this one face and going to our way for this section. Where it came from, why it masked this expression, what its name actually means, and at the end, a twist almost nobody knows. Let's go all the way through. Konnichiwa, Yoshi desu. First of all, it wasn't originally a tattoo, and it wasn't a game character either. There is a traditional Japanese mask drama called No. This is a wooden mask actor actually wore on their face in the theater. Its name is Hannya. What this name actually means is weird twist later, so just keep it in the back of your mind for now. 2 points for this episode. First, Warai Hannya, Laughing Hannya by Katsushika Hokusai. Around 1831, she laughing, holding a severed head, not quite the classic face. Second one, Utagawa Kuniyoshi. 1815, Watanabe no China meets the Ibaraki demon. No Hannya anywhere in the title. Totally different legend, but look at the face, horns, golden eye, torn mouth, wild hair. This is the closest thing to the Hannya we all know. So this is the image I'll use to walk you through it. There are several theories about where the name comes from, and the most famous one is that a monk named Hannya Bu made this mask and it wasn't named after him. Another theory says it came from a line in a No player Aoi no Ue, where there's a phrase, the voice of Hannya. But here's an interesting fact. The oldest record of No mask is a book called Sarugaki Tangi, written in 1430. But it only lists 14 types of mask, and the name Hannya isn't in it. The name Hannya itself only started in during the 16th century, and it first appears in the writing of a No actor named Shimotsuka Takataka, who was active in the 1580 to 1610s. The oldest surviving physical Hannya mask is said to date from 1558. So to sum it up, this face itself exists way earlier, but the label Hannya got attached to it much more recently than you think. When people think of Hannya, the story that comes up most is DOJOJI, where was a handsome young monk on a pilgrimage to Kumano named Anchin. He stayed at an inn, and the innkeeper's daughter, Kiyohime, fell for him at first sight. Anchin must have felt pretty cornered, so he lied, saying, "I will stop by again on my way back." Kiyohime waits, but he doesn't come. The moment she realized she'd been betrayed, the story completely changes. Sorrow turns into rage, and that rage starts spiraling into real supernatural power. As she crosses the river, her body starts turning into a snake. She becomes a full giant serpent and chasing Anchin. Anchin runs to temple called DOJOJI and hiding inside the bear. But Kiyohime, now a serpent, wraps himself entire around the bear and burns him to death, bear and all, with the fire pouring out of her body. Here's the key point: Kiyohime wasn't a monster from the start. She was just an ordinary woman who fell in love, and one single event, betrayal, turned her into a snake. The Hannya mask is actually this midpoint of the transformation. Not fully a snake yet, but no longer human either. A face right on that boundary. There's something most people don't realize here. A lot of people think Hannya is the final, complete form. Hannya isn't the scariest form there is, they think. But that's not true. It's the middle stage. Once you go past this state, you become a true, completely snake, a being that can no longer turn back. So that expression Hannya is wearing, those horn, that rage, this is actually right before the explosion. The maximum intensity of human passion, but the moment right before fully crosses over into a snake. Even right now, in this moment, Hannya is holding herself back, a state of controlling herself, so she doesn't become a snake. That's Hannya. Hannya has a color, but this isn't just a matter of taste. Each color is a code that tells you who this woman was and what stage her emotions were at. White Hannya is an aristocratic woman, the stage of suppressed sorrow where she still holds onto her dignity. Lady Lojoku from Aoi no Ue fits here. Red Hannya is a commoner, the stage of explosive passion. Kiyohime from DOJOJI is exactly this. Black Hannya is a fully turned beast, the final stage where almost no trace of human remained. But interestingly, when people actually get this tattooed, red Hannya is the most chosen color. In the end, the color people identity with most easily is passion. And Hannya is sometimes tattooed alone, but when pairs with other motives, the story completely itself. Hannya plus snake is oldest and most powerful pairing. You are essentially tattooing two moments of the same person, side by side. Because Kiyohime turning into a snake is the stage right after Hannya. Plus, since snakes shed their skin, they are also a symbol of rebirth, immortality, and luck, so it adds a layer of rebirth on top of this destructive story. Hannya plus Cherry Blossom use falling petals to subtly wrap around the root of her rage, the beauty she lost. Hannya plus Peony contrasts her rage with the nobility of what's called the King of Flowers. Hannya plus Flames is a direct visualization of the passion burning inside her.
Like, subscribe.
Only thing worth pointing out here, Hannya isn't a character that only show up in DOJOJI. She keeps appearing again and again across multiple players. In Aoi no Ue, based on the tale of Genji, Lady Lojoku becomes a living spirit out of jealousy towards Genji's wife. Unlike Kiyohime in DOJOJI, this woman hasn't even died. She became a demoness while still alive. So Hannya shows that emotions alone, regardless of death, can transform a person. In Kozuka, yet another story shows up. It turns out an old woman living in the mountains is actually demoness surrounded by piles of corpses. Unlike the previous two stories, this transformation comes not from love, but from isolation and madness. This shows that Hanya's is not a fixed character. It's only single frame. Extreme emotion turns a woman into something else, applied again and again, across different stories. So Hannya is really a character's name. It's closer to a state of being. Every single feature of Hanya's face has a reason. The two horns are physical form of obsession and resentment growing outward. The golden eye only have a hole where the pupils are, and that's marking saying this being has already gone beyond human. The wide, torn mouth, river-shaped teeth, fangs top and bottom, and the hair is shown disheveled. But here's the real key point. The upper part of face, the eyes, is designed to express sorrow, and the lower part, the mouth, is designed to express rage. Two completely different emotions are carved into one single face at the same time. And on the nose stage, this actually became a moving expression. When the actor tilts his head down, the sorrowful eyes are emphasized and it looks like crying. When he lifts his head, the fierce mouth is emphasized and it looks like rage. It's the same as the mask, but depending on how the actor tilts his neck, it reads a completely different emotion. This is considered one of the most famous techniques in no theater. Alright, it's time to pay up what is set up back in the chapter 2. The name Hannya comes from a Sanskrit word prajna. What this word actually means is the highest level of wisdom in Buddhism. You know the 6 parameters. This is the foundational concept that makes the other 5 possible. And it's exactly wisdom that her sutra teaches. To sum it up, a face driven made by jealousy, no longer human, has a name attached to that means the highest level of enlightenment in Buddhism. A name that means enlightenment attached to the face, that's the least enlightened of all. That's the paradox. The No actor Kanje Tetsunojo once said this about it. In Buddhism, Hannya originally referred to the stage of revelation of enlightenment. But in reality, we call it Hannya when attached grows horns. If that's ironic, it's ironic. Though maybe it's just a thought that it's a part of the process towards nirvana. There's another interesting branch to Hannya. There's a painting by a Japanese artist, Hokusai, called Laughing Hannya. She is laughing. It's a painting of a female demon holding a baby and laughing. There's no confirmed tradition about what this painting actually depicts, but there's one leading interpretation. There's a legend that a yaksha demon who used to eat other people's children received the Buddha's teachings, had a change of heart, and became Kishimojin, a god who protects children instead. And this painting is said to be exactly that moment, right before her changes of heart. So the most horrifying image might actually be the past of a being who later became the god of mercy. But this needs to be pointed out. It's a separate figure and a separate tradition from the Hannya of DOJOJI or Aoi no Ue. They share the same name Hannya. But what's interesting is that the story of a destroyer eventually becoming a protector repeats here too. To sum up, everything we've seen, Hannya boiled down to 3 stages. At first, she was simply a human woman who loved purely. She was betrayed. That wound was suppressed and it built up until she finally became a monster. But at the root of that rage, all the way through was love. So if you read Hannya as just an evil demon, you're only seeing half the picture. Hannya isn't a villain who deserves punishment. It's a face any human being could reach if pushed to the extreme. Not a bad guy, not a good guy. It's a face of a victim who became a perpetrator. Traditionally, there are 2 big reasons people get Hannya tattooed. The first is a mask of overcoming something. Kyoime kept suppressing her emotions until she finally exploded out of control and became a snake. But the logic of someone getting the tattoo is the exactly opposite. I know I have rage and owned inside me too, but I won't hide it like Kyoime did and let it explode. Instead, I will bring it out as a face, put it on my body, and look at it every day to keep it in check. The logic is that if you face your emotions instead of denying them, they won't consume you. The second reason is as a talisman against evil. It's a distinctly Japanese idea, using a scary face to drive away something even worse. It's the exact same principle as the demon roof tires. Onigawara. Place it on temple roofs. The duality of district being also being a protector at the same time. That carries through here too. You carve the pain you overcome into a face. That's why the Hannya tattoo is still so loved today.
Like, subscribe.
お疲れ様でした。